For more than a century, America's national parks have lured vacationers down the road to discovery. But it wasn't always easy to get to these destinations. In this video, I take you to Utah's Zion National Park and show how this stunning rock-walled valley emerged from obscurity in the early 20th century to become one of the nation's most popular scenic attractions. Zion became Utah's first national park in November 1919 through an act of Congress sponsored by Utah Senator Reed Smoot. It was Utah's first national park, and its designation was a point of pride for the Beehive State's boosters. Taking in the Great Canyon of the North Fork Virgin River, along with its pine-clad rims and deep tributary canyons, Zion has become one of the most beloved destinations in the entire national park system. Visitors to Zion Canyon in the early 20th century often compared its immense cliffs to Yosemite. They gave them names like the Great White Throne, expressing the religious and spiritual wonder they felt in this awe-inspiring place. For centuries, bands of the southern Paiute tribe made use of the canyon for hunting, foraging, and growing crops. All that would change as the outside world discovered what some locals called the new wonder in the desert. Pioneers of the LDS Church, sent to settle the region in the 1850s and 1860s, turned Zion to their own purposes, raising crops and grazing their livestock under its protecting cliffs. The Crawford family, who homesteaded in the lower canyon at the mouth of Oak Creek, enjoyed campouts of their own under Zion's shady alcoves. But it was a tough place to get to, and the wagon track that local settlers scratched out through the talus slopes was hardly suitable for tourists. The road to Zion becoming Utah's best-known natural wonder would be a long one, and it would involve economic and political forces reaching well beyond Utah's borders. In 1909, the U.S. Interior Department designated the main part of Zion Canyon as Mukuntuweap National Monument. The action came on the recommendation of a local surveyor named Leo Snow, who the previous year had checked out some settlers' claims near the brink of the canyon. In his report, he stated that the canyon ought to become a national park. Although the new monument was not as remote as Rainbow Bridge or Natural Bridges, Utah's two other national monuments, it was still a destination for those with the time and inclination to venture there. Local tourism boosters, such as Dave Rust of Kanab, shown here on the left in a 1914 horseback trip in Zion Canyon, understood that for Zion to become a major tourist draw, it would have to be made easier to reach, and that meant better transportation. But no money was appropriated to improve the monument or build a road to it until 7 years later. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, national park tourism was largely in the hands of the nation's railroads. Other national parks, such as Yellowstone, Glacier, and Grand Canyon, had rail lines to their doorstep. The closest rail connection to Zion Canyon lay 90 miles away at the lonely desert outpost of Lund, a freight stop on the Union Pacific Railway's Salt Lake to Los Angeles route. The road leading from Lund via Cedar City to the Mukuntuweap Monument was wholly unimproved. The emerging technology of the automobile held great promise for tourism, but the infrastructure that auto travelers needed, gas stations, repair shops, and most of all, better roads, simply didn't exist in rural Utah. Still, this didn't deter some hardy adventurers, such as the operators of this Dort automobile, named the Globetrotter, which reached the west rim of Zion Canyon in 1917. Newspapers and auto touring groups sponsored such expeditions and produced detailed road logs for intrepid travelers to follow. In 1916, Reed Smoot obtained a federal appropriation to improve the road in the lower part of Zion Canyon. By 1917, you could drive a car as far as the grotto near the present-day Zion Lodge. That induced a tourist entrepreneur named William Wiley, who had developed a system of tent camps at Yellowstone, to open a camp in the canyon. Visitors now had a place to stay when they arrived, with meals and evening entertainment provided. Horace Albright, the number 2 man in the National Park Service, shown on the left, visited Zion Canyon in 1917 as part of his tour of the Western National Parks. Albright told his boss, Stephen Mather, shown on the right, that the roads south of Cedar City and up the Virgin River were some of the roughest he had ever experienced. He was impressed with Zion, though, and said it ought to become a national park. Once again, Senator Smoot stepped forward, introducing a bill in Congress to make Zion a national park. It passed and was signed by President Wilson in November 1919, giving Utah its first major scenic designation of national renown. Stephen Mather visited Zion that same month and afterward praised its beauty at a businessman's banquet in Salt Lake City. Designation as a national park provided the recognition that Zion's boosters in southwestern Utah needed. Still, the problem was how to make it easier for tourists to get there. 2 enterprising individuals from Cedar City thought they had the answer. Chauncey and Gronway Perry ran an auto touring service there, and they partnered with the Wiley concern to offer a package tour of the new park. For $26.50, you could take a 3-day excursion to Zion, starting from Cedar City, with 2 nights at the Wiley camp. The Perrys later expanded their tour to take in the north rim of the Grand Canyon, where William's daughter Elizabeth ran another tent camp, as well as stops at Bryce Canyon and Cedar Breaks. The Perrys' skill as drivers was called on to negotiate the roads leading to Zion. Worst were the crossings of the Virgin River and other drainages on the way to Rockville and Springdale. Getting stuck was a regular event. And once you reached Zion, conditions hardly improved, but the Perrys made it seem like it was all part of the adventure. In 1922, the National Park Service, once again taking advantage of federal highway funds, extended the main canyon road as far as Weeping Rock. The Western railroads, though, still exerted an outsized influence in national park tourism. By 1925, the Union Pacific had completed a rail spur from Lund to Cedar City, putting Zion in closer range, and opened a hotel, the El Escalante, by the station. The railroad also built elegant park lodges at Zion, Bryce Canyon, Cedar Breaks, and the north rim of the Grand Canyon. These offered a higher standard of service than the simple camps that had sprung up in these places before they were parks. The Union Pacific promoted its new touring service through print advertisements as well as a motion picture created in cooperation with the National Park Service. This is a clip from a silent film, now in the National Archives, which depicts travelers arriving in Cedar City on the newly built rail spur from Lund. Passengers transfer to touring automobiles with open or removable tops for sightseeing. After arriving at the Zion Lodge, sightseers could take in the great cliffs and temples of the new park. The Union Pacific's investment in Zion paid off. By the mid-1920s, more than 20,000 visitors were enjoying the park each year. Tourism was now a major business, fulfilling the promise that its early-day visionaries held out for the remote sandstone gorge up in the headwaters of the Virgin River. In part 2 of this video, I'll take a look at how railroad-sponsored tourism at Zion and Bryce Canyon gave way to the independent auto traveler, setting the stage for the tremendous popularity of these parks in the decades that followed. There's more about the history of Utah's national parks in my book, Wonders of Sand and Stone, available from the University of Utah Press or your local independent bookstore.